Hey viewers, it's Timmy 2009, and I'm finally back with another Bluebird Thomas the Tank Engine video. Now, I know it's been a while since the Bluebird series has cancelled, and it's been a while since I've actually done a video talking about the Bluebird series. So, for those of you who've not heard of this is a project that took me I think 2.5 years to complete. I started this back in September 2022, and I completed it in February of 2024. So, but I think I might still try to catch up and talk about the characters I haven't talked about yet. Because I have done a couple of Bluebird reviews, but I never really focused on some of the main characters I've done. And originally I was going to do a couple more videos, but I kept pushing them off to do other videos as well. But since I have completed the Bluebird series, I feel like now is the perfect time. So, you might remember that in one of my videos, I took a look at some of the variants of the Bluebird trains. And I do have a couple more other variants I want to talk about. So, I made a few other Bluebird packs as well. So, if you don't know what these are from a Roblox game called Tiny Tank Engines, where I mainly got my inspiration from. And I want to give credit to Thomas Adventures because he was the one who created Tiny Tank Engines and not me. I mean, I made the 3-printed Bluebird trains, but he made the Roblox game. But these are some the Game Pass type of Bluebird trains that you would find in the games. Excuse me. But these are pretty cool in my opinion, and I think a couple of them are pretty great. So we have a Thomas pack. We have this one right here. We have a sort of railway series thing. The Seaside, and the special Christmas theme set. Now, I was going to talk about this set on Christmas, but I had a few other things on my mind, and I just wanted to make a video talking about what I got for Christmas. And by the way, I had a great Christmas last year. I'm pretty sure you can guess why. And this is probably my favorite thing I've gotten for Christmas. But I've already done a video on that. So, today I'm going to be splitting this video into I think maybe 5 or 6 parts, talking about all 5 of these packs and talking about which ones I like from least favorite to favorite. So we're not going to waste any more time, and let's actually dive into this. So the first thing I'm going to start off with is the pack that has Thomas. Since Thomas has really had undergone a lot of changes throughout the years, I know he relatively looks the same right here, but there was a lot of moments in the show where Thomas had a design change, or he went through some sort of accident that made him look different, or something else. Or maybe he just wanted to change his appearance. So, here we have a few different variants of Thomas to look at. So let's go over them from least favorite to favorite. Now, my least favorite ones are obviously no surprise to anyone who has seen my you know what type of video, where I talked about why I hate the CGI series and Hit era as well. Let's get one thing clear. Is that I'm not the biggest fan of the Hit era, and if you're wondering why, well, it's the same as any other person's opinions. I don't like the lazy writing. I don't like the fact that the characters are out of character. And I don't like how the stories feel. They just feel unoriginal and boring in some degree. And they always use the 3 strikes formula, which can get pretty repetitive. And it only gets worse in the Nitrogen era, where they use the same rhyming and alliterations. And just the more I talk about it, the more frustrated I get. So let's just get these 2 out of the way before I have an aneurysm. So we'll start off with paint-splattered Thomas from Calling All Engines. The movie that drags on for way too long, and the fact that it's a steamy versus diesel prejudice. And believe me, it only gets worse, because they don't even learn anything at the end, because they still continue to, be prejudiced towards diesels. So, Paint Splatter Thomas is the scene where, like, Thomas has to pick up paint from the paint works, but Diesel decides to, like, play a trick on Thomas and bump the paint wagon into him, and then he gets covered in paint, as you can see right here. And this is where most of the merchandise and marketing starts happening. Not just with all the pointless characters, but with all the different variants that they've done, like all the crazy things they could do. Like Respect for Gordon, Percy's Big Mistake, Fish, which is totally not a ripoff of the season 4 episode. And this one being a prime example. Now, I feel like they just wanted to like make different variants of Thomas just to, like, make more merchandise. Like, I feel like it's sort of the same thing with like the Pixar Cars franchise, where you like have the cars go through all these type of things that changes their designs, and they decide to like make every single car, including the variants that only appear for like a brief second. Like, I don't know how long Thomas has been covered in paint, but we see him bump into Airy. We see him at the washdown with all the other engines who like been fighting with each other and causing them all to be covered in something. I don't know. It's just, I will admit the fight scene was honestly one of my favorite moments. Like, seeing all the engines crashing and stuff and like getting all dirty and stuff, it's pretty satisfying. I also loved that they brought back Diesel 10 and Lady, but those are my only positives with the movie. There were some moments that did kind of scare me as a kid, like Diesel 10 scared me as a kid, even in calling all engines, but I love that Thomas was able to like talk him into like helping them with the airport. But if you want a better version of Calling All Engines, then I suggest watching Usual Bloke Luke's version of Calling All Engines, because he actually does a rewrite of Calling All Engines at the end, and I thought it was very impressive. But anyways, do I like this Paint Splatter Thomas? I mean, yeah, he does look pretty cool. But why is he my least favorite? Well, it's because of the movie that he's in. It would have been a lot better if there was like a better moment where Thomas was covered in paint, like maybe in one of the classic episodes or maybe the classic series. That would have been cool. I do love his face though, like this little tired out expression, even though that wasn't the face he made. But I gotta say, I love how I painted this. Like, you can see like the green and the red and how it just like splatters everywhere, and like all the yellow and stuff. Like, you can see how it like drips down on him, and even the green on the dome. It's just so cool. Even the back here as well. Like, look at this thing. I will admit, as much as I hate Calling Legends, I gotta say, this is a pretty good model. Even if it wasn't a bad movie. Okay, but let's be honest. Okay, next up we have this Bubble Thomas from, like, I want to say Sticky Toffee Thomas. But there are other episodes where Thomas had a washdown, like in the infamous Thomas's Day Off, where we meet Dennis the Lazy Diesel. But I don't remember much about Sticky Toffee Thomas, and personally, I don't want to know what happens in it, because, like, I'm over the hit era at this point. Like, I'd rather not revisit it nowadays. I much prefer the classic episodes in the Andrew Brenner era. But what I'm guessing is that there's this moment where Thomas, like, wants to, like, dress up like an airplane, and there's a 3 strikes formula where he's an airplane. I don't remember what the second strike is, but I think the third strike is when he gets covered in, like... No, wait. First strike is when he wants to be a plane. Second strike is when he crashes into, like, the toppy tanker. And I think the third strike is when he gets covered in bushes and stuff. I don't know. Please correct me if I'm wrong there, but I'd rather not talk about Sticky Toffee Thomas, because I'm not a fan of Season 10. It's boring. Let's move on. Okay, now let's actually get into the good stuff. So, let's talk about these two right here. So, originally, when the first game came out, there was originally supposed to be like a Coal Dust Thomas, but Thomas Ventures just decided to remove him from the game and replace him with J50 Thomas. Now, I will admit that is kind of sad, although I do think that J50 Thomas is not that bad of a model. But dude, I really love this Coal Dust Thomas. Now, I decided to make my versions different compared to, like, the ones in the game. Because I thought I'd make this Coldest Thomas more accurate to how it was in Thomas Percy and the Coal or Double Trouble, whichever title you prefer. Excuse me. But dude, like, this is another, like, well-painted model in my opinion. I decided to give him the angry face, and I gave him black on his cheeks and his nose, like, almost like he's blushing. But that's meant to be coal dust. Now, I was originally going to, like, make his entire forehead, like, covered in coal, but I just didn't think that would look good, in my opinion. And that would just make him look kind of weird. But the back is completely plain, by the way, but I don't, like, know how I was able to, like, weather this thing. Like, I took a paintbrush and just, like, painted on one of my, on the area where I paint, like, and then just, like, took the dry brush and just, like, stroked it all around Thomas. Like, it is a little bit, it is kind of slow, like, just painting, like, the normal Thomas and just, like, covering him with stuff like this paint splattered Thomas over here. But I gotta say, I really love how this Coal Dust Thomas came out, and it has to be one of my favorites. And I do love Thomas Percy and the Coal as well. The fight scene with Thomas and Percy was kind of alright. Like, I probably wasn't, like, the biggest fan of when Thomas and Percy started arguing. Like, I know Thomas didn't like Percy at first, but I think they managed to be good friends. But still, like, look at how, like, I just really love how dirty this Coal Dust Thomas is. Like, he just looks so, like, appealing to the eyes. Like, it's kind of hard to look away from this thing. It's also kind of hard to look away from paint splattered Thomas, because look at these guys. Like, I think my custom skills have definitely improved since then. Like, if I can make other, like, versions of the Coal Dust Thomas, that would be pretty cool, but so far this one's my favorite. And it is kind of sad that he got removed from Tiny Tank Engines, but anyways, let's talk about J50 Thomas that I brought up. So, originally Thomas was supposed to be a J50 in the Railway series, like when Audrey first illustrated him. But then Reginald Payne decided to turn Thomas into an E2 class tank engine, which honestly I would say is a better redesign. Like, I personally love Thomas the Tank Engine as an E2. Now, if Thomas was a J50, I would have thought it was kind of weird, but I'm happy that Reginald Payne made the decision to make Thomas into an E2. And I don't understand why Wilbert Audrey wanted to, like, redesign Thomas. Like, I think Reginald Payne made him just fine the way he was, but then Audrey just decided to, like, add on extra details and stuff like the smoke box saddle and try to give him a second cab window, which is understandable, but I'm still not a fan of when he made Thomas's running board flat. I prefer his dip running board. And when the model makers decided to make his running board white instead of black, I think it just made Thomas better. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Anyways, next up, I'm pretty sure you probably know this one because I've already talked about it before. But this is the Magic Railroad Thomas from Thomas and the Magic Railroad. The infamous 2000 movie that failed in the box office. And you could say that this was the downfall to Thomas and Friends, but I still love Series 6 through 7, and I'm sure many people do as well, because they've made a lot of great characters like Murdoch and Spencer and Salty. And they do ignore Magic Railroad's existence, like you don't see any of the characters come back and stuff. But I will admit that Season 6 is the weakest season of the classic series, and I plan to do a video on that. I'm not going to go into too much detail on this Magic Railroad Thomas, because I've already done a review on him, but I think he came out pretty nicely. Like, I painted him in a metallic blue, and he is kind of accurate since he doesn't have, like, the cab doors. But yeah, he's basically the same as this normal Thomas, just painted in metallic blue. Alright, now, let's talk about, I think, one of the best versions of Thomas that there's ever going to be. And that is Streamlined Thomas from The Great Race. I've already talked about Ashima and Gina before, and why Ashima is probably my favorite character from the CGI series. Favorite female character, that is. Hero is my favorite, but that's besides the point. Streamlined Thomas has got to be an amazing concept. Like, So there was one moment in the Great Race where Thomas wanted to change himself to, like, but the whole, like, theme is to, like, teach Thomas to just be himself and to be who you are, which is a great message. I love how it was executed. The race itself was pretty interesting. There were some pretty shocking moments, like when Gordon's boiler exploded and when Gordon became streamlined. And when Henry and James didn't win the strength and decorating competitions. But I gotta say, I love how Thomas gave up his, like, position to help Ashima win. And then he won in the end for helping. But then Thomas had this idea to be streamlined like Caitlyn. And I gotta say, the streamlined song was pretty catchy, and I would have loved this movie more if Sir Topham Hatt didn't decline this idea and just, like, decide to make Gordon streamlined, because remember, Thomas is the one who came up with the idea. And then when Thomas decided to repaint himself, Sir Topham Hatt basically, like, again, like the streamline idea, he didn't do it for Thomas, but he did it for James and Emily and have them be decorated instead. Like, I don't know what it is about Sir Topham Hatt, like, taking Thomas's ideas and using them for other engines when Thomas was the one who came up with the ideas. I feel like that's even, like, as bad as, like, Sir Topham Hatt giving credit to, like, the other engines for finding the treasure when Thomas is the one who discovered the pirate ship, and Thomas is the one who discovered the treasure, not Rocky, not Marion. So why is Thomas not getting all the credit? Sorry, that's just, like, a little bit of a nitpick I have. But still, the streamlined Thomas here is pretty nice. Now, I know he doesn't have every detail, like the red lining on the sides of the white stripe and the number 1, but I can't really write that small. If you don't know the size of these things, like, hold on. Just look at Thomas in my hand. This is how small they are. So, it is kind of, like, hard to, like, paint on small details like this, but overall, I think Streamlined Thomas came out pretty good for what he is. Now, if Tiny Tank Engines wasn't canceled, I think it would have been cool if we got other Streamlined trains as well, like Connor and Caitlin, but let's be honest, I'm not doing any more of these. I'd rather move on to other projects. I had a lot of fun making this, don't get me wrong, but I feel like I should do other projects as well and not just one. So, anyways, I think that'll do it for this video. Let me know what you thought about it, and which Thomas did you love the most? I gotta say, I do love Paint Splattered Thomas for what it is. I think the Coal Dust Thomas is visually stunning as well. J50 Thomas and Magic Railroad Thomas are good as always, and I will admit, all these Thomases came out pretty nice. So, stay tuned for the next video where I talk about the other packs. Anyways, take care.